This is Everyday Tension. Real stories based on real experiences about everyday conflicts people rarely talk about. This story was shared anonymously. If you'd like, you can support the channel by liking or subscribing and let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Here's what happened.
It was a Tuesday when my husband died. They called me at work. The manager came over to my station and just looked at me, and I knew. I didn't know what, but I knew it was bad. He told me to go to the hospital. My sister was already there when I arrived. She was the one who said the words, "Car accident." He was gone before the ambulance even got there. I remember sitting on a plastic chair in the waiting area, the smell of antiseptic, and thinking over and over, but I just packed his lunch this morning. That was the thought. Not that I loved him, which I did, or that our life was over, which it was. It was the mundane detail that stuck. The turkey sandwich and wheat bread, a bag of chips, an apple. I'd put it in the fridge for him to grab. Our son, Michael, was 4. He was with a neighbor. Telling him was the hardest thing I have ever done. He didn't cry at first. He just asked if Daddy's car was broken. I said yes, it was very broken. Then he asked if we could fix it. That's when I started crying, and then he did too, because he saw me. That's how it started. The crying, and then the not crying. Because you have to keep going. There was a small life insurance policy. It paid for the funeral and covered the mortgage for a few months. After that, it was just me. I worked as a receptionist at a medical clinic. The pay wasn't enough, so I asked for more hours. They gave me some, but not enough. I got a second job, nights and weekends, doing data entry for a billing company. I'd drop Michael off at the before-school program, work my 8 hours at the clinic, pick him up, give him dinner, put him to bed, and then sit at our old computer for 4 or 5 hours, typing numbers into spreadsheets. My eyes would burn. My back would ache. I'd listen to the quiet of the house, which was so different from the quiet when my husband was just asleep in the other room. This was a heavier quiet. Every decision was about Michael. Clothes? He got new ones from the discount store. I wore my old ones until they frayed. Food? He got fruits, vegetables, milk. I ate a lot of toast and eggs. Vacation? We didn't have any. A treat was renting a movie from the kiosk at the grocery store. I remember once, he wanted a specific toy all his friends had. It was expensive. I worked an extra weekend of data entry just for that toy. When I gave it to him, the look on his face was everything. It was worth the tiredness. That's how I measured things. Was it worth the tiredness? For him, it almost always was. I didn't date. I didn't have time, and I didn't have the interest. My life was work and Michael. My friends drifted away. They'd invite me to things, and I'd always say no, and eventually they stopped asking. My family helped when they could, but they had their own lives. It was lonely, but the loneliness felt like a fact, not a feeling, like the weather. You just put on a coat and go about your business. Michael was a good kid. Not perfect, but good. He did okay in school. He had friends. As he got older, he started to understand the money situation. I'd say, "So we can live here? So you can have what you need?" He'd get quiet. In high school, he got more ambitious. He saw other kids with more, and he wanted it. He started talking about college, but not the state school nearby. He talked about big-name schools, far away. I encouraged him. I wanted him to want things. I just didn't know how we'd pay for them. He got into a good university, not an Ivy League, but a prestigious one, with a partial scholarship. The rest we covered with loans. Big loans. My name was on them too. I didn't care. This was his chance. The day I drove him to the airport, my car packed with his stuff, I felt a panic I hadn't felt since his father died.
I wanted the rest. I wanted the rest. What is this other rest?
It was a physical feeling, like my insides were dropping out. He was excited, bouncing his knee the whole drive. He hugged me at the curb, said he'd call, and then he was gone, wheeling his suitcase through the automatic doors. I sat in the car for a long time, just watching the doors slide open and shut. He did call, at first, once a week. The calls got shorter. He was busy, he said, making friends, joining clubs, studying. His world was expanding, and mine was shrinking back to the size of our quiet house and my 2 jobs. I paid the bills, I sent in spending money when I could scrape it together, and I waited for his calls. After graduation, he got a job offer in another country, a finance job in a big Asian city. It was an incredible opportunity, he said. The salary was huge. He could pay off his loans in no time. I was proud and terrified. That was so far away. But I told him he had to take it. How could I not? He moved. The time difference made calls harder. We shifted to video calls, scheduled for my Sunday morning, his Sunday night. He looked different. Older, of course, but also sharper. His apartment in the background looked like something from a magazine. All white and sleek. He talked about work, about the city, about the food. He didn't ask much about home. When I brought up the loan payments, he said not to worry, he was handling it. He sounded annoyed that I'd mentioned it. Then, about a year into his time there, he started talking about a woman. Her name was Ilara. He said she was from a very well-connected family. Old money, he called it. He said it with a kind of awe I hadn't heard from him before. He'd never been impressed by money, not like this. He described her family's house, their vacations, their connections. He was in love, he said. I was happy for him. I asked when I could meet her. He said soon, maybe on a video call. Months passed. He didn't bring her on a call. I'd ask about her, and he'd give short answers. She's good. She's busy. I started to get a bad feeling, a low hum of anxiety in my stomach. It was the same feeling I got when I knew a bill was due, and the money wasn't there yet. A practical dread. The call happened on a perfectly normal Sunday. My time. I was in my kitchen, the morning light coming through the window over the sink. I had my tablet propped up against a coffee mug. He was in his living room. He was talking about a deal he was working on, using words I didn't understand. I was nodding, pretending to follow, just happy to see his face. Then, behind him, a woman walked into the room. She was beautiful. Tall, with long, dark hair, wearing elegant, simple clothes. She glanced at the screen. She said something to him, her voice soft. I couldn't hear it. He turned slightly, smiling at her. It was a smile I didn't recognize. Polite, careful. Then she leaned a little closer, looking at me on the screen. She smiled, a friendly, curious smile. She asked him, clearly, in English, "Who's that?" There was a pause, just a second. He looked from her to the camera, at me. His eyes met mine, and he said it. His voice was calm, level, like he was stating a simple fact. "Oh, that's just my old nanny." The words didn't make sense at first. They were just sounds. Nanny, my old nanny. I stared at his face on the screen. He wasn't smiling, but his expression was neutral, pleasant even, like he'd just introduced the mailman. I saw Elara nod, still smiling politely. She gave a little wave to the screen. "Hello," she said. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. My throat closed up. It was as if all the air had been sucked out of my kitchen. Just a vacuum, and those words echoing in it. He looked back at me. For a fraction of a second, I saw something flicker in his eyes. It was gone before I could name it. Shame? Fear? Annoyance? Then it was just blank again. "I've got to go," he said, his voice still normal. "Talk next week, okay?" He reached forward, and the screen went black. I sat there. The sun was still shining on my sink. I could hear a lawnmower somewhere in the neighborhood. Everything was the same, and everything was different. My old NANNY. The shock was a solid thing, a block of ice in my chest. It didn't hurt yet. It just was. I sat until the sun moved off the sink. Then, slowly, the ice began to crack, and the feeling came in. It wasn't one feeling, it was a storm of them. Hurt, so deep it felt like a physical wound. Betrayal, humiliation, a raw, bewildered anger. And under it all, a devastating sadness. He was ashamed of me. He was so ashamed of where he came from, of the woman who worked double shifts and cheap clothes, that he had erased me. He had turned me into a hired help. The nanny. I cried then. Hard, ugly sobs that came from a place I didn't know I had. I cried for my husband, who wasn't here to see this. I cried for the little boy who needed his toy. I cried for all the tired nights, for the toast and egg dinners, for the loneliness I had accepted as the price of his future. He had taken all of that and reduced it to a lie for a wealthy girlfriend. The crying eventually stopped. The hurt didn't, but it changed. It hardened. It became a resolve. It was a clear, cold thought that formed in the middle of the night as I lay awake. I was not going to sit in this kitchen and be his shameful secret. He called me his nanny? Fine. The nanny was coming for a visit. I didn't plan it dramatically. I did it practically. I went online and found a flight. It was very expensive. I had some savings, money I'd been putting away for emergencies, for house repairs. I used it. I bought a non-refundable ticket. I didn't tell anyone I was going. I packed a small bag, and I took the photo album. The old sticky-aged one with the faux leather cover. Pictures of him as a baby on my hip. Pictures of his first day of school, me kneeling next to him. Pictures of Christmases in our small living room. Proof. The flight was long. I didn't sleep. I just stared out the window at the dark ocean, the photo album on my lap. I wasn't angry anymore. I was empty and determined. I just needed him to see me, to look at me and say it to my face. I took a taxi from the airport to the address I had from sending packages. It was a tall, glass building in a clean, quiet neighborhood, the kind of place where you couldn't imagine a child ever playing on the sidewalk. I stood outside the building for a while. My legs felt weak. I hadn't really thought about what I would do if he wasn't home, but it was a Sunday evening there too. He was probably home. I got into the building behind another resident. I took the elevator up to his floor. The hallway was silent, carpeted. I found his door. I stood in front of it. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my ears. I took a deep breath. It didn't help. I raised my hand and knocked. I heard movement inside. A voice. His voice. Coming. The door opened. He was standing there, dressed in casual clothes, holding a glass of water. He was looking down, maybe expecting a delivery person. Then he looked up. The change in his face was instant and total. All the color drained from it. His eyes went wide. His mouth fell open slightly. The glass in his hand dipped, water sloshing. He looked like he'd seen a ghost. For a long moment, he just stared. He couldn't speak. I looked back at him. I held up the photo album. "The nanny," I said. My voice came out quieter than I meant. but it was steady. It didn't shake. Is here today to see if a little boy still actually remembers his own mother. He flinched. The words landed. I saw them land. His gaze dropped to the album, then back to my face. The shock was melting away, replaced by something else. A slow, dawning horror. His eyes began to search mine, frantically, looking for something. Forgiveness, maybe, or a sign that this was a joke. He didn't find it. We stood there in silence. The only sound was the faint hum of the elevator down the hall. I could see past him into the apartment. It was even more beautiful than on video. Everything was expensive and minimal. There were no photos on the walls. Then his face crumpled. It started around his eyes, a tight squeezing. His chin trembled. And then the tears came. They weren't quiet tears. They were heaving, choking sobs that seemed to be torn out of him. He brought his hands up to his face, the glass forgotten, water dripping onto the pristine floor. He slid down the doorframe until he was sitting on the ground, his back against the wall, his whole body shaking. I didn't move. I just watched him cry. I felt nothing. Not pity, not triumph, just a kind of numb observation. This was the consequence. This was it. A door opened down the hall. A neighbor peeked out, then quickly closed it again. After a long time, his sobs subsided into shaky breaths. He wiped his face with a sleeve, leaving wet streaks. He looked up at me, his eyes red and wrecked. "Mum," he whispered. It was the first word he'd said. It sounded broken. I didn't say anything. He struggled to his feet. He was unsteady. He gestured weakly into the apartment. "Please, come in." I walked past him. I sat on the edge of a white sofa. He closed the door and stood facing me, like a child waiting to be scolded. "Elara's not here," he said, his voice hoarse. "She's visiting her parents." I nodded. He started talking then. The words poured out in a messy, desperate stream. He was sorry. He was so sorry. He didn't know why he said it. He was scared. Elara's family was so judgmental, so focused on status and background. He heard them talk about other people they considered new money or social climbers. He was afraid they wouldn't accept him if they knew he came from a single mother who worked as a receptionist. He thought if he could just get them to like him first, it wouldn't matter later. He said it was a moment of stupid, cowardly panic. He said he regretted it the second the words left his mouth. I listened. I held the photo album on my lap. I didn't open it. He asked me to forgive him. He begged. I finally spoke. "You told her I was the nanny," I said. It wasn't a question. He nodded, fresh tears in his eyes. "Yes. You let her wave at me. You let her say hello to the nanny." He covered his face with his hands again. I know. I'm a monster. I don't deserve you. I stayed for 2 hours. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just asked questions, and he answered them, crying most of the time. He offered to call Elara right then and tell her the truth. I told him not to. That wasn't my decision to make. I asked if he loved her. He said he did, but he also loved me, and he was so ashamed. He said he'd been carrying the shame since he got here, since he saw how other people lived. He said he felt like a fraud. I left when it got late. He wanted me to stay in his guest room. I said no. I got a hotel near the airport. I flew home the next day. That was weeks ago. Now, he calls me almost every day. Sometimes twice a day. He always apologizes. He tells me he's told Elara everything. He says she was upset, mostly that he lied, but that she wants to meet me properly. He says they are planning a trip to come see me. He sends me money, more than I need, trying to pay back the loans faster than required. He texts me photos of his day. He is trying so hard. It feels frantic, and I don't know what to do. Part of me hears his voice, so full of regret, and I remember the little boy who needed me. That part wants to say, "It's okay, I forgive you, let's move on." That part misses my son. It's tired of being hurt. It wants the simple love back. But a bigger part of me is broken. That part watches his daily calls come in and feels nothing but a cold heaviness. That part remembers the click of the video call ending, the silence of my kitchen. That part feels erased. It wasn't just a lie he told to someone else. It was a lie he told about me, about my life, about all those years. He didn't just hide me, he replaced me with a fiction that was more palatable for his new life. He looked at me through a camera and denied I was his mother. How do you come back from that? When he calls, I answer. I talk to him. My voice sounds normal, even to me. I ask about his work, about the weather there. I don't talk about my feelings. I don't tell him that every time I see his name on my phone, my stomach knots up. I don't tell him that I look at the photo album sometimes, and the pictures just seem like pictures of strangers. He says he wants to rebuild our relationship. I don't know what that means. I don't know how you rebuild something when the foundation feels like it was blown apart. Trust isn't a switch you can flip back on. He says he'll do anything. But what is there to do? He can't unsay the words. He can't give me back the moment before that call, when I still believed my son saw me for who I was. I go to work, I come home, I pay my bills. Life goes on in its quiet way. But the question is always there, in the back of my mind, a low, constant hum. It's there when I make dinner for one. It's there when I try to sleep. How do I let him back in? Should I? Is forgiveness something you decide, or is it something that either grows or doesn't, like a plant, regardless of what you want? He is my child. I spent my life for him. That doesn't just go away, but the hurt is real too. It sits in my chest, a solid, aching thing. Some days, the missing him is worse than the hurt. Other days, the hurt drowns out everything else. I don't have an answer. I just have the phone calls, and the silence after I hang up, and the old photo album on the shelf. I take it one day at a time. That's all there is to do. Maybe one day the answer will come, or maybe it won't. Maybe this is just how it is now.